Once upon a time, in a village far north of Zimba Kingdom, there lived a woman named Anita. Anita's life drove her to make choices she never thought she would. One day, Anita stood at the edge of the dense forest, the path behind her long and winding. Her heart pounded in her chest, the weight of her past heavy on her shoulders. The village witch doctor, an old man with deep lines carved into his face, had told her that his potion would give her a fresh start, a chance to forget everything that had plagued her for years. No more pain, no more guilt, no more haunting memories. "Just drink it," he had said, handing her a small dark vial filled with a strange liquid. Desperation had brought her here, and in her desperation, she swallowed the potion without hesitation. For a moment, everything was still. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, a wave of dizziness overtook her, and she collapsed onto the forest floor. When she opened her eyes, she felt light, almost weightless. The burden of her memories was gone. But as she tried to recall who she was, a cold realization crept in. She didn't even remember her own name. She wandered aimlessly through the forest, unsure of where to go, her mind a blank slate. The sound of birds chirping and leaves rustling in the breeze felt oddly unfamiliar, yet comforting. The woman she used to be was gone. But as she continued walking, an unsettling feeling lingered in the back of her mind, a quiet whisper reminding her that no one can truly escape their past. The woman, now nameless, eventually stumbled upon a small village nestled at the foot of the mountains. The villagers were kind but curious, asking her where she was from and what had brought her to their remote home. She had no answers. "I don't remember," was all she could say, and they quickly realized something was amiss. An old woman named Mama Fola took her in, offering food and shelter. As they sat in front of a small fire that night, Mama Fola shared stories of the village, tales of ancestors, and forgotten legends. "People come here to hide, to forget," Mama Fola said, her voice low and raspy. "But forgetting doesn't mean it's gone." The woman listened, not fully understanding but feeling the weight of the words. She felt safe here. Yet there was something about the village, a hidden tension, an unspoken secret that kept her on edge. The days passed, and although she worked in the fields and shared meals with the villagers, a part of her felt empty. The nameless woman began having strange dreams, visions of places she didn't recognize, faces she couldn't name. In the quiet moments when she was alone, fragments of her past began to resurface, like shadows dancing at the edge of her mind. But every time she reached out to grasp them, they slipped away. One evening, as the village prepared for a festival celebrating the harvest, a stranger arrived. Tall and imposing, he wore a cloak that covered most of his face, but his eyes were sharp, scanning the crowd with purpose. The nameless woman noticed him immediately, her heart racing for reasons she couldn't explain. There was something familiar about him, something that stirred the deepest part of her mind. The villagers greeted him cautiously, but he had no interest in their pleasantries. His gaze fell upon her, and for a moment, time seemed to freeze. He walked straight toward her, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. "You," he said, his voice low and commanding. "You belong to me." The words sent a chill down her spine. She didn't know him, or at least, she didn't remember him, but his presence stirred something deep within her. Before she could respond, Mama Fola stepped in between them. "She belongs to no one," the old woman said firmly, her eyes narrowing. The stranger didn't argue, but the look he gave the nameless woman was filled with a promise that whatever connection they had wasn't over. That night, the woman couldn't sleep. The stranger's words echoed in her mind, bringing with them flashes of memories she had long buried. In her dreams, she saw glimpses of a life before the village, a life filled with passion, betrayal, and a love that had turned dangerous. She saw herself standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out over a stormy sea, the wind whipping through her hair, and beside her, there was a man. His face was blurry, but she knew it was the stranger. She awoke in a cold sweat, her heart pounding. The memories were incomplete, but they were enough to leave her shaken. What had she forgotten? What kind of life had she left behind? and why had she felt the need to erase it? As she wandered through the village the next day, she found herself drawn to the forest, the place where it had all begun. The witch doctor's hut was hidden deep within the woods, a small, dark structure covered in vines and moss. She hesitated at the door, her hand trembling as she knocked. The old man opened the door, his eyes gleaming with a knowing smile. "You're remembering, aren't you?" Inside the witch doctor's hut, the air was thick with the scent of herbs and incense. The old man motioned for her to sit, and as she did, he began to speak. "You came to me because you were running from a life you no longer wanted, from a love that had turned sour. You begged me to make you forget, but I warned you. Some things are impossible to forget." The words hit her like a wave, and suddenly it all came rushing back. The stranger, the man from the village, had been her lover once. They had been deeply in love, but something had changed. He had become possessive, controlling, and eventually dangerous. She had fled to escape him, desperate for a new beginning, but no potion could erase the bond they had shared. Tears filled her eyes as the weight of her past settled back onto her shoulders. The witch doctor watched her silently, his expression unreadable. "What now?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Do I run again?" The woman returned to the village with a heavy heart. The memories of her past weighed on her, but she knew she couldn't run anymore. The stranger was waiting for her, standing at the edge of the village as if he knew she would come back. "You remember now, don't you?" he said, his voice low and dangerous. She nodded, her heart pounding. "I remember," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "But I'm not the same woman I was before. I won't be controlled by you anymore." The man's eyes narrowed, and for a moment it seemed like he might lash out. But then, something shifted in his expression. A flicker of regret, perhaps. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said quietly. "I just couldn't stand the thought of losing you." She took a step back, her mind racing. The love they had shared had once been real, but it had become toxic, suffocating. And now, with her memories restored, she knew she had to make a choice. Would she forgive him and try to rebuild what they had, or would she finally break free from the chains of the past? The decision weighed heavily on her, but deep down, she knew what she had to do. She couldn't go back, not to the man she had once loved, nor to the life she had left behind. Her past would always be a part of her, but it didn't have to define her future. "I'm leaving," she said, her voice firm. "For good this time." The stranger's face darkened, but he didn't try to stop her. "Where will you go?" he asked, his voice filled with a quiet resignation. She smiled softly, a sense of peace settling over her. "I don't know," she admitted, "but wherever it is, I'll be free." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the village and her past behind. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. She didn't need a potion to forget anymore. She had the strength to face whatever came next, with her heart and mind finally her own again. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing content. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. Share your thoughts or questions in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.